Right, Ron, how are you all, Q-Sport players? Hope you are all well. No Flannery here, Q-Sport Hub. So I just thought I'd do a little video going out on YouTube and have a little chat about. I've spent, God, how old am I now? I'm quite old, 55, 54, 54. And I've spent all of my adult life working in elite sport. And unfortunately, Q Sports is not it. I love Q Sports. Obviously, I do most of my work these days in Q Sports, but Q Sports is not in any way, shape, or form an elite sport. And I'm talking even World Snooker here. Unfortunately, it's so far behind. The likes of, up here, Formula One, English Premiership football, probably setting the standard and everything below that, tour golf, tennis, NFL, various other kind of like elite sports, but they're still a step ahead of the top two, behind the top two. And then as we go down the list of sports, even World Snooker's probably down here somewhere. It's has such a long way to catch up. And what do I see as the biggest difference? Well, I see, and obviously pool especially, right? There's such a profound process difference in the way things are applied. So, and understandably, you see, even for an amateur pool player, it's understandable. Obviously, like the standards they're applying themselves. It's obviously like less than a tour golfer would be. Yeah, absolutely. And it's still very much a pastime and a part-time sport. But in order to enjoy that sport more, if you just take some tiny bits that's done in elite sport and apply that to yourself, then you're going to just enjoy the sport so much more because you get so much more out of it, and the results will follow. So even just little things like an elite sport, like a English Premiership team or Formula One team, we're not going into even event on event. You're never going to the next event doing the same thing as you did the event before. Even if you won that, you're going into the next match or race, whatever, and you're evolving what you're doing. Because even if the result is great, if you keep doing the same thing, you'll keep getting the same result. And then for them, even if that was enough to win the last race or match, if they stand still, their opponents behind them will be finding ways to get better, and therefore they'll catch up and then pass them. So they need to be constantly, each Premiership football team is constantly doing this, match after match after match. And it's about that rate of improvement. Can they make it faster than the teams ahead of them or behind them? So in order for the teams at the bottom to catch up, right, obviously they need to improve faster than the teams that are at the front. But there is an opportunity to do that because the lower the level, the easier it is to make a gain. But when you're at the very top, it's very hard because you now have to be like incredibly innovative and doing things, that they're not able to do, that's not been done before, for example. But the teams that are below, they're able to look at what the teams above them are doing, replicate that, and that will mean some steady improvement and might mean to start to close that gap. But even for amateur pool players, like if you did the same in terms of, and I see this all the time, like, we're just about at the time of recording this, we're just starting a new pool season with Ultimate Pool, for example. It's just about to kick off, and it's like I see this so often where, like, I've done sessions with players, and it's like, right, so what you do differently now to what you did last season? You didn't want the results you did last season, okay? So what are you going to do differently? And the answer's, don't know, you're just doing the same thing. So if we keep doing the same thing, how can we expect a different result? You're not going to get a different result. The result's going to be exactly the same. And so they're just going into this next season hoping for results to be better. It's just not going to pan out well. So this is what's happening in elite sport, and they're not afraid to try new things. As I say, you would think if a team at the upper echelon ones is winning, they'd leave everything alone, but they know they can't. It's not an option for them because they'll get caught, like I've kind of already pointed out. So it's this constantly evolving what it is we're doing in elite sport. And this is very much like in Q Sport Hub that we teach players how to do that, how to evolve this. And also what happens in elite sport, another difference, apart from this constantly evolving process of what they're doing, and myself and James do exactly the same in business too, because this is what we do for a living. And we're constantly evolving our approach and what we're doing, and different content and ads, and setting different, just with adverts, just setting different parameters on them and targeting other countries, and just constantly evolving what we're doing to try and find better ways, things that get better results out of that. So it's exactly the same with big businesses. Big, really successful businesses understand this process. They're not just doing the same thing, they're evolving what they're doing, and that's how they get to the very top and be truly successful. But that is hands down something I see in Q Sports not happen very much at all. But players are still expecting different things to happen. They're still hoping something's going to click this year. This is my year. But they're doing exactly the same things. And also another kind of keen common process that you'd find in elite sport is, as weird as it sounds, a tour golfer is not trying to get better at everything. No good. They're understanding that there's 1, 2, 3 things tops that's more important than anything else to be good at. And with that in mind, from that point on, you're off and running. There's 2 or 3 things to master, and everything else needs to be very proficient at. This player needs to be very proficient at, absolutely. But it's 2 or 3 things he has to absolutely master and constantly bear that. So he's constantly evolving his process and what he's doing. But is the focal points that he's trying to evolve to get better at are very, very subscribed, and it's just very focused on 2 or 3 things, because these are the bits that make the biggest difference, from that standpoint on. So, like for a golfer, it's all about, the short game, for example, putting especially, so yes, they're in the gym and on the range and everything else and practicing bunker shots, but all of that stuff is done to a good degree, but they're not absolutely all in on these things. They're all in on the short game, as it's called, chipping, putting, and this is where the biggest gains are to be had, right? And they understand that. I've never worked in tour tennis, but I would imagine it's the serve, right? That's probably it. Especially in the men's game. And that would be profoundly. Everything's important, but some things are more important than others because they make a bigger difference than others, right? Like if a tour golfer spent 90% of their time practicing, bunker shots, that's not going to impact, their ranking in the following season. It's not going to impact the results. But if they spent 90% of their time on doing short game stuff, that absolutely would. But the trouble they've got in such a well-developed sport is all of their competitors also know that. And this is the beauty about the lower level sports, like Q Sports, for example, is because players are not understanding, there's bits that are much more important than, there's aspects of this game that are much more important than others in this sport. Um, um, and I'm not going to give that away here, but it's certainly on the hub and it's explained in full of exactly why this is the case, what it is, and why it's the case, and why and this is the proof that it's the case. So this ends up dominating practice and exactly how to practice in a much more professional, dedicated manner. Because again, the tour golfer or the tennis player or the Formula One team or English Premiership football team, like they are focusing themselves on the bits that make the biggest difference, and then with that in mind, that defines their process and how it is they get better and how they develop themselves. So what those two things alone mean that this would be the norm in elite sport. There'd be nothing unusual in this. But yet I find in cue sports that this is very unusual and players are not kind of focused on this stuff. And so it's really it really defines what we're doing, because obviously Cue Sport Hub, we're now sat on, I'm on 11 world titles, and eight of those have been in Cue Sports. Don't know how many European titles and winning huge competitions in hayball and snooker and competitions across the globe. And that success has come because our approach is completely different to everybody else's, not just from a mindset perspective, but also from a strategy side of things in terms of the bits that we have players practice, and also our application in this constant evolving of our process and what we're doing, and I instill this in our players that we work with one-to-one, and instill this in them, and that they need to constantly evolve what it is they're doing and how they're doing that in order to see and get better results, even if they're winning and doing really well. Brilliant. The next thing that they try might make them worse. It might be a step back. That's absolutely okay. Now we know that doesn't work for them just now, anyway. And we'll try something else. And so we're constantly evolving everything that we're doing. And when we do that, that process is so brilliant, and if a player executes that in a really, really professional manner, they can only get better at a rate that's faster than anybody else. Because, and I will give this away, but there's on an overall basis kind of thing, it's really all that matters is the player gets better. And in order for them to get better, they need to get better, or you need to get better in order for your game to get better. So it's all about self-development. You do that by increasing your knowledge and your skill set, right? That's what self-development is, your knowledge and your skill set. And I work on myself on a daily basis, constantly doing things in order to make myself, a better person, a better coach, and more skilled, etc. I'm constantly evolving my process and what I do. And I watch videos back that I maybe made 2 years ago, and it's not that I disagree with the content that I put out or the conversation I was having. Not at all. It was the best I could do at that point 2 years ago. It was still, in my view, very good, but now obviously I'm 2 years older and wiser, and I've developed myself and worked on myself, for hundreds and hundreds of hours during the course of that 2 years. And now obviously I'm even better because my process is better. My rate of improvement cannot be better than the process that I've put in place in order to improve. Right? And it's exactly the same for you all. you know, your game cannot improve better than your process that you put in. And most players' processes, unfortunately, is zero. They've absolutely no idea what to do or how to do it, and they're just hoping that the next season brings more success. But that's what our online courses here at Teacher, you know, come and join us, links below, and look, it's only £10 a month. It's an absolute no-brainer. And we're going to teach you all of this.